Hey there, family. This is King Kurus, the Black History Buff. Back again to take you on another leisurely stroll through history. Today, I've got two incredible stories to share with you. These stories remind us of the long-standing presence and impact of black players in English football, a history that's often overlooked. Let's start our journey in the late 19th century with Arthur Wharton, Britain's first black professional footballer. Born in 1865 in Jamestown, Gold Coast, now Accra, Ghana, Arthur had quite the pedigree. His father was Grenadian, and his mother was a member of the Fanti Ghanaian royal family. Imagine that, royalty on the football pitch. Arthur came to England in 1882, aged 19, initially to train as a Methodist missionary. But life had other plans for young Arthur. He soon abandoned his religious studies in favour of becoming a full-time athlete. And what an amazing athlete he was. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting, because Arthur wasn't just good at one sport, he was an all-round sportsman. He excelled in cycling and cricket, playing for local teams in Yorkshire and Lancashire. But his true claim to fame? On July 3rd, 1886, Arthur Wharton became the world's first official fastest man when he set the world record for the 100-yard dash, running it in a blistering 10 seconds flat. And get this, that record stood for over 30 years. So here we have Arthur Wharton, the fastest man in the world, and what does he decide to do? He becomes a goalkeeper in football. I know, it sounds mad, doesn't it? You'd think they'd want him as a striker or a winger, using that incredible speed. But no, Arthur started his football career between the sticks for a team called Darlington. He quickly made a name for himself, and in 1886 he caught the eye of Preston North End after playing against them. He joined Preston as an amateur and was part of the team that reached the FA Cup semi-finals in 1886 to 1887. During a third-round victory against a team called Renton, Arthur's performance was described by the Athletic News as one of the best exhibitions of goalkeeping I have seen for a long time. Arthur's career took him to several clubs, including Rotherham Town and Sheffield United. And in 1894, he became the first black player to play in the top flight when he appeared for Sheffield United against Leicester in the old First Division. But Arthur's life wasn't just about sport. In 1890, he married Emma Lister, and they had 2 children together. Arthur became a pub landlord in 1891, running the Albert Tavern in Rotherham. And it seemed like he was living the dream, a successful sportsman with a family and a business. However, life wasn't all glory for Arthur. Despite his incredible athletic achievements, he faced significant challenges off the pitch. The racism of that era meant his contributions were often overlooked or undervalued. He faced discrimination and abuse, both on and off the field. And these constant battles, they took their toll on Arthur. After retiring from football in 1902, Arthur struggled financially and battled with alcoholism. The man who had once been celebrated as the fastest in the world found himself working as a colliery haulage hand in Yorkshire, struggling to make ends meet. He sadly passed away in 1930 in relative obscurity, buried in an unmarked grave. It wasn't until 1997 that a headstone was placed on his grave, a belated recognition of his pioneering role in British sport. Now, let's fast forward a bit to our second hero of the day, Walter Tull, born in Folkestone, Kent in 1888. Walter's story is another of triumph over adversity. Like Arthur, Walter faced tragedy early in life. He lost his mother to cancer when he was just 7, and his father passed away soon after, leaving Walter an orphan at 9. He and his brother Edward were brought up in the Methodist Children's Home and Orphanage in Bethnal Green, London. Despite these hardships, Walter's talent shone through. His football career began with amateur club Clapton FC, where he quickly made a name for himself. By the end of his first season, he'd won winners' medals in the FA Amateur Cup, the London County Amateur Cup, and the London Senior Cup. The Football Star called him the catch of the season. In 1909, at the age of 21, Walter signed for Tottenham Hotspur, making him one of the first black professional footballers in the top division. He even became the first black professional footballer to play in Latin America when Spurs toured Argentina and Uruguay. But Walter's time at Spurs wasn't easy. He faced horrible racial abuse from fans and the press. After one particularly bad incident during a game in Bristol, a newspaper ran what's possibly the first recorded headline about racial abuse in football. This was over 112 years ago. The writer praised Tull as Hotspur's most brainy forward and a model for all white men who play football. But despite his talent, Tull was soon dropped to the reserves. Walter didn't let this setback stop him. He moved to Northampton Town, where he thrived, making 111 first-team appearances. Then, World War I, and Walter's story took another remarkable turn. He was the first Northampton player to enlist, fighting in the Battle of the Somme, one of the bloodiest battles in history. In 1917, Walter broke another barrier. Despite several official rules barring natives from becoming officers, his leadership skills were so impressive that he was promoted to second lieutenant, becoming the first black infantry officer in a regular British Army regiment. Tragically, Walter's life was cut short. He was killed in action in 1918, aged just 29, and his body was never recovered. These stories of Arthur Wharton and Walter Tull are more than just football history. They're stories of resilience, of breaking barriers, of facing incredible odds and still achieving greatness. They remind us that black people have been playing football and playing it brilliantly for well over a century in the UK. These men face challenges they're hard for us to even imagine today. But their struggles and triumphs paved the way for future generations. Every time a black player steps onto the pitch today, they're walking in the footsteps of these pioneers. As we wrap up our walk through history, I want you to think about the legacy of Arthur Wharton and Walter Tull. These men weren't just footballers or soldiers. They were pioneers who faced unimaginable challenges with courage and dignity. They broke barriers not just in sport, but in society. Their stories remind us that progress isn't always linear. Arthur Wharton went from being the fastest man in the world to struggling in obscurity. Walter Tull rose to become an army officer only to fall in battle, but their impact outlived them both. Today, when we see black players excelling on the pitch or black officers leading in the military, we're seeing the fruition of seeds planted by Wharton, Tull, and countless others whose names we may never know. So I ask you this: how can we honor their legacy? How can we ensure that the next Arthur Wharton doesn't end up in an unmarked grave, or that the next Walter Tull's life story isn't forgotten. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going, because it's through dialogue and understanding that we as a people move forward. If these stories have touched you, if you want to help uncover and share more hidden histories, consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support allows us to keep digging, to keep walking through history, and to keep shining a light on the stories that helped shape our world. Remember, Black history is world history. It's a crucial part of our shared heritage. When we understand our past, we're better equipped to shape our future. Until next time, family, keep learning, keep growing, and keep breaking those barriers. Stay blessed.